Well, China's People's Liberation Army will be taking part in the military exercises taking place in Russia's Astrakhan region. China's sending troops from its Western Theater Command for military drills. The Western Theater Command is the unit of the PLA which was involved in the LAC clashes with Indian troops. Now, these troops will be sent for drills with Russia. The Western Theater Command of China covers Tibet and Xinjiang regions, which are China's most active fronts militarily. Pakistan, Iran, Myanmar, Belarus, and Armenia will also take part in this particular exercise. And remember, India pulled out of the same exercise last month. And this comes shortly after the RIC trilateral in Moscow, as well as the Indo-China foreign ministers meeting, which was held in Moscow just very recently. We'll talk about this and get a perspective from our guest on this matter as well. Joining me on the show is Sumit, political analyst, Jitendra Ojha, national security and geopolitical expert, Major General Dr. G.G. Dwivedi, global and strategic affairs expert, and last but by no means the least, Wing Commander Praful Bakshi, former chief spokesperson, Indian Air Force. Commander Bakshi, asking you a simple question. A lot has been made about the China-Russia friendship and these drills which are going to be conducted in the Western Front. What kind of significance do they have amidst the ongoing tensions between India and China at the LAC? Obviously, China has not been in war for the last 40-odd years. They want to get warmed up. So you'll have to unmute yourself.
The drill, as you're talking of, Vineet, is coming at a time where the tensions are out here. And if you see the countries which are taking part, they are very, very comfortable with China. Russia at the moment is not taking any sides and not even making any statements regarding that. Russia is playing its game very safely. And they had drills in Iran, and Iran, they had drills in Oman, with Oman, South Africa, all those places. And previously, of course, India had backed out due to COVID. And now, again, there's a lot of speculation why India is backing out again. The question is, China wants to make a statement through this drill that it is peace-loving, and the exercises which they do in the drill will have a lot of humanitarian roles carried out in the drill. China would like to show its attitude. And you drills. It's a show of strength or a show of firepower. Basically, that sort of a thing. It's going to be a political military, messages across. And India does not want to be a part of that. In fact, India's backing out earlier is in favor of it because it does not want to take part with China into this game. But the question is, if anybody of us is now objecting to why China's Western Command troops who are involved in conflict here are taking part in there, I think that's a bit too much. Tomorrow, our soldiers who are taking part in this, they may go into some other United Nations exercise or something like that, and armies cannot object to these sort of things. This is a quite unprofessional approach. I don't think so that should hold any water. What it should be there, that we can remind Russia through our good offices that you please understand the sensitivity of the situation in this time. Is it the right time to do this, or should you spend your energies somewhere else in trying to bring in rapprochement or trying to tell China or whatever the case may be? This drill at this time is only at the behest of China. China wants to create an image for itself.
Absolutely. And Mr. For Russia as well, the western and the eastern parts of their border are perhaps, a cause of concern. On the west, there are obviously hostilities. There have been hostilities ever since the Cold War ended. But on the east also, they have some appeasement to do because they don't want to antagonize China. And at this point in time, Russia, although being, literally broke, is in fact falling for the trap that China has laid out. But what kind of a significance does India derive out of these exercises which are being conducted with China by Russia?
No, India does not want actually.
That's for Commander Bakshi. Let me come back to you. That's for Mr. Ojha. I'll come back to you, sir.
Okay, these are part of military diplomacy during normal times from during peace times. What China has been trying to do is to send a very clear signal that it is, of course, we have discussed earlier, it's a supreme power, major power. Regarding Russia, Russia always has their security establishments, etc. They will always have this kind of apprehension vis-a-vis China, but their options are limited. Unfortunately, in the West, there is a problem. They are still obsessed with Russia because Russia and initially British rivalry that goes back to it has a long history, 18th, 19th century, and still it was colored by Cold War. But large number of people, even within American establishment, they are still obsessed with Russia. So this Russia doesn't have an option, and whatever political system they are having, there are concerns over there. But there are concerns for us, even in the West. Rather, we have not mentioned. But you see the kind of hostile press we are getting on this Sino-Indian conflict in Washington press, Washington Post and New York Times. So West is having a little bit of issue, and they have not been able to address it. And to that extent, China is leveraging it to its advantage. I feel the kind of goodwill we had with Russia, if we were a stronger power, we were a major power, we could have rather played a much bigger, more active role. Fact is that China is economically and militarily and technologically far too aggressive. It has worked on an agenda, and it is part of that exercise where choices with Russia are very limited, choices with most other countries in the region are limited, and there are concerns to what extent American response is going to be cohesive. Because if their mainstream media is not able to appreciate and not fully receptive to the sensitivities, then you can really be worried. And Chinese somehow have been taking advantage of this thing. They have been trying to mock Americans because of their incoherent response to COVID. They have been trying to mock them because of American withdrawal from international treaty obligations. So this is a difficult time, one can say. But in this difficult time, I say that Russia is proceeding with a lot of caution. Other countries they don't have much of an option. And China is trying to make the maximum out of it. But we should also not make much out of this exercise because a very small contingent, I'm sure generals will elaborate it much better, a small contingent from the Western theater is going to participate in this exercise. So even by participating in this exercise, their strength in Western theater is not going to be impacted significantly. But the whole thing is more of sending a message to the West.
General Dwivedi, are we too sensitive about Russia still? We've had this friendship with them for a very long time. Are we too touchy about who Russia associates itself with? If it's getting closer to China, should that bother us in any way? Because it seems to be bothering us.
As far as the global geopolitical architecture concerned, it's never constant. It's very dynamic, and that depends upon how the strategic situations are shaping out. What are your national interests? Today, China and Russia are in the same camp, simply because they have one point agenda: how to defy the US-led global order. And Russia also have been cornered. In Europe, there are sanctions against Russia. Today, the economy is in really bad shape, and they are surviving basically through the energy export to China. They have built the Siberian, oil and gas pipeline. They are selling weapons to China. So willy-nilly, this is the French, strange bedfellows. They have no love lost. But today the situation is so that Russia has to toe the Chinese line. Having said that, now let me come to, and therefore Russia has to play, in fact, overtly neutral because they have deep interest in China because of the issues I pointed out. Now let's come to the exercises per se. My experience when I was in China, most of these drills, and these drills are more diplomatic. They are like defense diplomacy. Small contingent go and they do exercises like humanitarian against terrorism. They are not really combat exercises in spirit. And these troops are generally sent from Beijing military region, which is now known as the Central Military Region. They have the troops which do these type of ceremonial and such type activities. But why have they picked up Western Theatre Command? I have 2-3 my own logical reasons. Firstly, Western Theatre Command, please understand, it looks after the complete frontier, not only of India, also with the Central Asian Republic. It has a huge quantum of force. There are two core-size formations, which is Xinjiang Military Region, which is now involved in Aksai and Tibet Military Region, which largely looks after the Arunachal Front. Besides that, they have two corps, 76 Corps and 77 Corps, which is again almost 40,000 each of troops. Then they have 6 Air Force divisions, and they have artillery and also rocket force. So it's a huge quantum of force. Now they sending this small complaint could be two messages. Firstly, they will say that, oh, Western Theater Command is not on fire. We are even sending troops from there. So therefore, it's a quite a normal situation. And secondly, to show the confidence that look, we are able to handle situation, and we can even send troops for exercises. So they could have these two particular reasons. And what we should look at is, I think we rightly pulled out of the exercises because at one end we are almost ready to shoot at each other. We have suffered casualties, and now we cannot be marching in same tune in this ceremonial forum. I think that's a very correct decision, and I fully support it. We cannot be marching in tune in one end and also looking at each other through the aperture of our weapons.
Sumit, again brings up the question that, the ministers spoke of peace, spoke of tranquility, spoke of bilateral growth, spoke of obviously China is definitely perturbed and peeved with the application ban as well. And I think that must have sent the message home. If China is perhaps going to back out in the future, Sumit, it's also going to compute and factor in this snub that we have given to them economically. But at the same time, these exercises, in the Western Command of China, do they signify anything to you? What they signify to the world is something that the world does not notice. Xinjiang is a province that China has perhaps exploited the most. It's aggressive there at the most. And that's, in fact, the area which is in focus once again.
I think, Vineet, if you look at this, I'm not talking about the military from a military point of view, think from a political point of view. Why Western Theatre Command? Because Western Theatre Command is engaged with India, and they wanted to send the troops from the same bunch of guys to engage in this exercise. Now, incidentally, we have also come to know that before this Galwan incident, they had sent some Chinese kung fu trainers to Galwan, and they ended up with 106 graves at the end of the day. So this Western Theatre Command is at an all-time low prestige and ego within the PLA. They are, and the general, incidentally, who's there is around 60 to 70 years, some bit including that age. He has fought a war 40 years back, and he was supposed to deliver, the sky and the moon for Xi Jinping, but he ended up giving him a gift of 106 graves, which they never claimed. The problem with China is they don't even acknowledge their dead. That's why I don't call the PLA army. It's a mercenary force who works for a master called General Secretary Xi Jinping. So that's the difference. So now they're sending them to Russia to get that a bit of morale up and all. They wanted to confront those Indians. They want to show the Western Theatre Command is very good and brave. But the fact is, Russians know that Chinese cannot be trusted. Look at the war of Xingbo, where the Russians lost more than 100 men. It was Chinese deceit. Even around a month or a month and a half back, they claimed this port of Vladivostok, which is a Russian port. Chinese claim this is my territory. Russians will never ever want to play a second fiddle to China. But the problem is, look at the Russian facts. The economy, 82% is depending on the sale of oil and weapons. We once upon a time used to be their biggest market, but we are diversified to US, we are diversified to Israel and other countries. So Russia is also diversifying to other countries because it has to sell its oil and weapons to survive. They don't have an option. We have done military exercises with the US. So parallelly, Russia is also trying to do exercise with China. So we should not see too much into it, but Russia is our friend because I just gave one fact, which Bakshi Saab will agree to. If we have the spares of the Sukhoi fleet from availability of 50% with the right amount of spares and in JIT concept, the availability increases to 85%. And Russia has ensured that recently when Rajnath Singh ji went there. So even in this conflict with China, Russia had stood with us. They have given us everything what we asked from them for. So there is no reason to join, kind of doubt Russia's intentions. But yes, we have de-risked ourselves, so is Russia de-risking ourselves. And China is a predator beneath. Wherever they see an opportunity, they will want to get into it. But Russians very well understand. They don't want to be a second fiddle. They have not fought that. They have not forgot their Battle of Xingbo. And Russians know Chinese cannot be trusted in any way whatsoever. But the economic compulsions of Russia, in a way, and geopolitical situations, force them to do a little bit of business with Russia, with China. But again, they have maintained their stand. We are neutral. They have supported India with whatever we ask them. Actions speak more than words. While in Chinese, the actions are contrary, the words are contrary. But in the case of Russians, their actions have been pro-India. They have helped us. They have given us what we want. let's not look too much deep into it. The only one person who's going to, cut his nose to spike his face are the Chinese and their Western Theater Command, which was and will be useless under that 70-year-old general who was not for award for 40 years, and he thinks of winning India. Well, I think the opium is sold cheap in China. I mean, that's all what I can conclude.
All right. Commander Bakshi wants to come in.
Vineet, I wanted to tell you that I'll take a word from General Dwivedi, what he had said. You see, they are trying to build their own polar world. Russia is very keen. You know, when I had gone to Poland and Belarus to conduct a training for their air forces, I personally was very surprised that Poland was preparing to join NATO and they were forcing themselves. You know, and there was a lot of pressure from Russia on the and after that I went to Belarus. There was a pressure from Russia. The Lithuanian and Estonian people were joining the NATO. Russia is very worried that NATO is expanding this way, and all the erstwhile the countries which were under its domination, you know, they are getting into it. Russia has got that worry also. Besides that, and we should not try to suspect Russia too much about our whole thing, because Russia has its own problems to solve also. So probably he's building up a strength in this region. But Russia is very worried about American expanding in this and expanding its area of influence in this region. Besides what is happening in India and China, besides that, Russia has its own little problems around the backyard. And that is what is worried. And that's why Russia is doing overtime into conducting these exercises and getting its erstwhile countries back. So I'm not saying he'll create Warsaw Pact again, but the question is, he will work something on that line and to counter the effect on NATO. And why NATO I'm talking of? Because NATO is getting the maximum market of defense all around the world. They're joined together. That is what is troubling Russia and its allies, including China. China also is selling a lot of equipment and weapons. So that is how it is.
Absolutely. General Dwivedi, that's what China's strategy has been. They're looking for countries that are cash-strapped, countries that are in dire need of money, and predominantly now, countries that are perhaps against the United States, and now the latest addition is India. But Russia doesn't fit that bill.
Absolutely, because as far as if we look at the two issues, in a little different manner, as far as India is concerned, Chinese are very skeptical about India, and they like to India be marginalized, and that's what they've done all along. They have got Pakistan to, play a zero-sum game. They have always opposed us at all the global forums. So as far as China is concerned, a weak India, a passive India, marginalized India suits their grand design. Now, when you come to the global arena, China has made it very clear they want to be a sole superpower. They are not even willing to share the G2, the bilateral, bipolar world. So therefore, they are also up against America. Now, whom they have as the allies. After all, they have to have allies. They cannot be doing single-handedly. So they have Pakistan, they have North Korea, they are building up Iran, they are trying to get into Afghanistan, and of course, Russia. And Russia has its own ambition. Russia was a global power. Right now, they may be on the knees, but they're not out. They're trying to get back. And they are using also the Chinese to pursue their agenda. And as Commander Bakshi rightly brought out, that they are very concerned about the westward, eastward expansion of NATO. So therefore, I think these equations are working out purely interest-based. But in a nutshell, I would say that as far as India is concerned, China will always look us as number two, always try to bully us, try to sort of corner us, but we have to stand up to China and we have to build up our confidential power. And Russia is playing to its own interest. It's not against us. It's not with China. They are just playing the cards as they come.
Right, absolutely. And Mr. Ojha, just a couple of minutes left onto the debate. Some concluding remarks from you. Obviously, no association, is under our control. What's in our control is how well we treat our allies, something that China has failed to do time and again.
Vineet, we are living in a different world, and whosoever and wheresoever we can meet people, have some understanding, not on the basis of alliance, but even on issues, we have to go for that. Now, China has a kind of inferiority complex only vis-a-vis India, because India is only civilization that is way, way older than China. The golden era in China were Tang Dynasty era and Song Dynasty era, or even Han era when Buddhism went there. So that kind of inferiority is there in China. So in order to overcome that inferiority, China would be determined to somehow marginalize us, make us completely irrelevant. So that psyche we have to appreciate. Regarding Russia, Russia and India always had strong geostrategic and security interests. It was there in 1960s after 53. I was reading one of the diaries and notes of US ambassador in India, and he has Chester Bowles in 1960s, who was contemporary of Pandit Nehru. And he says that Pandit Nehru had described Stalin as the coldest man he had ever met. But still, after that, it was geopolitical interests which brought India and Russia together. And these geopolitical interests remain today also. And the threat is China. As General Dwivedi pointed it out, they depend on China for their economic needs. So that's why they have to get along. And we have to be careful. We have our own independent interests. And wherever possible, we have to assert ourselves, find ways of working together with people. But we have to come up and resurrect as a major power and the oldest civilization and a state of its own form, a state power of its own kind. And that opportunity we cannot forego. I'm sure if India emerges as a powerful state, the entire global order will be far more stable in wake of American withdrawal, which appears inevitable from this region, or at least reduced role in this region.
Wants to make a concluding point. Sir, go ahead.
Can I?
Sure, sir. Go ahead.
You see, when we are talking of this, after 1962, when India had a debate, in the hands of China, America wanted to open up the gates because Prime Minister Nehru had written America for the F-104 aircraft. They conducted an exercise along with Australian Air Force, Canadian Air Force, United Kingdom, and Indian Air Force at Kalaikonda in 1963 called Exercise Shiksha. And it is at that time America tried to get us into their camp and thought this little debacle at the hands of China will make us, and America has been trying to get us under their influence ever since then. But somehow or other, it did not work out. Now, again, the games have changed. America has now trying to, get us into the game with all the weapon systems, etc. So the whole thing is of weapon system and the market of weapon, which is creating this political scenario. And of course, Zar and Zameen is included in that. So it goes hand in hand.
All right.
I'll just make one quick sentence.
Quickly, sir. Quickly.
Yes. Look, even friends of India in America, they are very keen that Americans need to respect India and the depth of its civilization rather than making it as one of its bonded kind of allies. So we have to be conscious of our identity as well. Thank you.
Can I make a quick point?
10 seconds. 10 seconds, Sumit, and then we wrap up.
If you look at India-Russia relations, it's intention and intent. If you look at China-Russia relations, it is deceit and disease. Second point, India and China have a boundary dispute, right? While as India and Russia have no boundary dispute, we cannot get into their territory, they cannot come into our territory. And last but the last thing is, over the years, last 56 years, the diplomacy of karma and dharma has prevailed between India and Russia. While with Russia and China, it's only deceit, disease, and dokha. Deceit, disease, and dokha. Now, Russians are smart enough to take their calls. They're a very smart bunch of people. They know what Chinese are worth of. It is like, it is like a person who's waiting with a gun to shoot at you. Nazar hati, durgatna gati. That is what China is all about.
With 10 seconds, just 10 seconds. I just want to make a simple point. The moment India's and Chinese, power differential reduces, automatically the whole game will change. And that's what we must work on. Improve our comprehensive national power, and we can change the whole game on the global arena.
Okay, last minute, or rather, interventions from all the guests. It finally heated up, but unfortunately, we have run out of time. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinny.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much to learn. Thank you so much, sir.
Very good.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to listen to you. Yes, very good.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.